My name's John Spragens. I'm an attorney in Nashville with Spragens Law. I was reflecting on this because 20 years ago, I was a journalist, just like the journalist in this room, and I was covering sexual abuse cases in Nashville, including cases involving sexual abuse of children by Catholic priests, other religious leaders, camp counselors, and other people in positions of authority. 20 years ago, Susan Vance was there standing outside the Diocese of Nashville, demanding accountability, just as she has continued to do in East Tennessee. In the last 2 decades, we've seen a lot of progress. We've seen investigations in other parts of the country that have documented a history of sexual abuse and too often systematic attempts to cover it up and to silence abuse survivors and their advocates. Today, we mark an important milestone in that progress with the resignation of Bishop Sticca after an investigation by the Vatican. I want to echo Patrick in thanking brave survivors of sexual abuse like John Doe and Jane Doe. Without their incredible courage to hold their perpetrators accountable and to demand accountability from the diocese and church leadership all the way up to the Vatican, sexual abusers and those who cover up sexual misconduct would continue to get away with it. Bishop Sticca's resignation represents an important step toward accountability. I also want to acknowledge the decades of work done by advocates for abuse survivors, helping these men and women confront their abusers and hold the church accountable for covering up and enabling sexual abuse. This work by members of the community to demand justice is heartfelt and it is personal. It has changed many lives, and it has made it possible for our client, John Doe, to have the strength to come forward and confront his abuser and those who enabled his abuse. There's more work to be done, though. Tennessee has passed a law that makes it a felony for priests or pastors to have sexual contact with members of their congregation. It's an abuse of a position of trust for a religious leader to have a sexual relationship with an adult in their congregation. And now the state of Tennessee and the church itself recognize that abuse, sexual abuse, can happen between a member of the clergy and an adult. That is what's happened in this situation. The work that remains to be done, however, has to do with the statute of limitations in Tennessee. Survivors of sexual abuse, the studies show, often do not know that they have been abused until later in life. In fact, after age 50, typically, when through painful processes in their own life as they confront past trauma, they learn that they, in fact, were a victim of sexual abuse as a minor. In Tennessee, it's too late for people to get accountability through the civil justice system if they don't learn that until they're 40 or 45 or 50 or 55. And that's why Tennessee needs to join an increasing number of states around the country, states and provinces, 27 the last time I counted, that have expanded the amount of time that you can bring a civil lawsuit to hold a sexual abuser accountable for your abuse that happened when you were a minor. The federal government has completely done away with the statute of limitations for sexual abuse of minors. That's a bipartisan effort, and it should be a bipartisan effort in Tennessee as well. We should also have a window for survivors of sexual abuse who are confronting these past traumas that happened to them. Anybody who suffered from sexual abuse should be given a time period to come forward now and file a case in our civil justice system, because that's the way we demand accountability in this country. There's going to be a broad coalition of groups like SNAP and others who are going to be demanding this change at the state legislature. There was a bill filed in the past session to prospectively undo the statute of limitations for child sex abuse, and we're going to be calling for accountability based on examples like we're seeing here in East Tennessee. I want to thank one more time John Doe, our client, for his courageous efforts to hold the church accountable, and I thank the priests and members of the Catholic Church, including members of congregations in East Tennessee, who have been unwilling to let this slide and who have demanded real accountability from their leaders. Thank you. There is a national advocacy group called childusa.org that has, I would encourage you to look at their website for resources about the state of statutes of limitation with respect to civil justice for sex abuse across the country. In Tennessee, a coalition began to form during this last legislative session to try to push the legislature to repeal the statute of limitations going forward. So anyone who is sexually abused in Tennessee, what the original bill said as of July 1st, 2023, which is Saturday, would have the opportunity to sue at any time that they realize that. I think it should be broader. I think you'll find broad support in this coalition to enable survivors of sexual abuse, even if it happened 20 or 30 years ago, to bring those claims now, which is something that you've seen happen in various states across the country, New York, Vermont, there's a whole list of them. So even Kentucky has moved further down this road than Tennessee has. So it's time for Tennessee, and I say that as someone who's born in Kentucky, it is time for Tennessee to catch up with the other states and try to provide justice for sexual abuse survivors. This is something that has been extremely bipartisan on the federal level, and I have every hope that it'll be bipartisan in Tennessee as well.